About 3 years ago, I was driving to, it was during the COVID period. So I was driving down some semi-rural area, around about this time, in fact in July, it was very cold. And I saw these young girls on the side of the road, scantily dressed in winter, 11 o'clock. They couldn't be older than 18 years old. So they piqued my curiosity. I thought, what are these kids doing here? You know, we have a constitution that protects the rights to education. So being a journalist, I just drove up the road, parked on the side of the road, and just looked at these kids. And cars were coming down, stopping, picking up these girls, driving off. And when it clicked what was going on, I was horrified because my daughter, who was like 18 years old, whenever she takes an Uber, I'm looking at where she's going because I'm afraid it might just derail and go somewhere else. And here were these kids really being bought and sold in a semi-rural area. They couldn't be older than 18 years old. And I started tweeting about it. And people were so nonchalant about what was going on. They just said, oh, you must have been on that road, Sodoma or Gomorrah and whatever, you know. That's what happens.
Wow.
And I said, I mean, these are 18-year-old, younger. Nonetheless, I got into the movement to try and abolish prostitution.
Right.
And then once I was in there, I then learned this is a whole thing of organized crime. It's not just selling people's bodies, it's selling drugs, it's substance abuse and keeping them in there. And it targets the most vulnerable of people, the most marginalized, the poorest. And in our country, and really even in the US, it is black people.
Yeah.
Around the world, it is brown-skinned people. If you go to India, the caste system, the darker they are, the less driven on the margins of society. And it's a system, and we call it a system because it's organized crime, as I say, you know, and it's driven human trafficking. But ultimately, when I spend time with these survivors and victims, it's about food. It's about poverty. So that's the space within which I've operated using my connections to try and see how we can better change that system where young people can be given skills. And in my view, you know, if we spend more time teaching people how to produce their own food, because every one of these people that I've spoken to have always said, I went there because I wanted to put food on the table. And being a rural girl who grew up with a dad who we got everything from our garden, I thought, this is where we should start. But in the meantime, we're doing other things.
Yeah, right. We were discussing food. And I said, well, a week or so ago, President, I always get his name wrong, Ramaphosa.
Yeah.
Did I say it right?
No.
Oh, Ramaphosa.
You don't pronounce the PH in the English way. It's P. So he's Ramaphosa.
Ramaphosa.
That's correct.
Ramaphosa. Okay.
Yes.
He went to Ukraine, him and another president.
Yes.
To speak with ending the war in Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
Because the price of grain here in Africa is rising, which it ties into what you're saying, and which took me back when I spoke to the brother today, how Thomas Sankara back in the 80s said, why can't Africa grow our own grain? Why do we need to go outside to other countries and depend on European powers? Which is true. And he was, for that statement, one of the many statements he made, he was assassinated.
Yeah.
So I said many of the problems in Africa, and not just Africa, worldwide, could be alleviated if we operate collectively, independently from European powers. But the way the system is set up, it's once you try to operate outside their system, you become a target.
Yeah.
You know. So many of the young girls, like you said, going back to the prostitution, as we travel worldwide, like we were in, remember when we were in Ghana and the guys had the young girls?
Yes.
Same thing.
Same thing.
And we had to, we would publicly embarrass these people. And of course, we use the scriptures, the word of God, to try to draw our people from that life of sin into, you know, a better life,
Yeah.
a promised life, a good life.
We call it a world of exploitation.
Yeah, it is.
Which is,
It is.
I
It
mean,
is.
yeah, it's a sin for
Mhm.
those that perpetrate this and use the vulnerability of others
Mm-hmm.
to prop up their own pockets.
Right.
Really, yeah.
Exactly. And so, and this problem, like you're saying, is a worldwide problem. And they prey upon the most marginalized, as you said. And our job is to teach them that who they truly are in the sight of the Most High God. Okay, we have been labeled in society, and like here in apartheid was what, 30 years ago? About 30 years ago. It ended 30 years ago.
Well,
91, right?
90, yeah, well, 93. I think,
93.
yeah, 93, yeah.
How many years was that? Was that?
It's just over 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And things have changed somewhat, but not where it should be.
Yeah.
And it's just like in the States, during the civil rights, how that ended in like 65 and all of that, which was 50 something years, but it's still not, although we got a black president, he really did nothing to change the course of the black problem, our oppression, you know.
That system is the capitalist system is so deep
Mm-hmm.
that if you see a black man becoming a president in the US,
Yeah,
you know he's just a face.
yes, just the face.
He's never going to do anything.
Yeah, and it's funny you said it, because when I spoke to the brother today on the podcast, and he was saying it was the same with Mandela. Everyone was, Mandela! And the Mandela that went into prison was not the same that came out.
Yeah.
He was a broken man,
Yeah.
and they were able to use him.
Yeah.
And we were discussing how the situation here, the only thing, just like in America, what has changed for our people is that certain individuals have been allotted positions in society, but the masses of the people, the bulk of the people, are still in that impoverished state. You have your athletes, you have your NBA stars, your actors, journalists even. I see on, like, I was watching the news, who make substantially more than the rest of the population. So those are the people that say, we made it, but when you look back at the masses, no, you didn't make it. You didn't, you know. And we were discussing how in Libya, like I said, I made a statement to him. I said in Libya right now, they're still selling citizens of South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, as slaves. And nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
I said, with all these 54 black presidents here in Africa, nobody says nothing. When they can all converge on Libya and get back to citizens, what are you doing to our people? But no one does anything.
Yeah.
No one does anything.
Because ultimately there is no economic power. There's no, I mean, in South Africa, for example, we've got political power, but we don't have economic power.
Right.
It resides, and that's why when you said apartheid ended,
Right,
there's a
right.
bit-
You gotta pause, because really did it?
did it?
Right, I
But,
understand.
I mean, the laws have changed, some of them. We still have laws which are from the apartheid system.
Right.
The laws have changed.
Mhm.
There's a black man in power. There are black people in positions.
Right.
But mentally, economically,
Right.
we're enslaved.
Exactly.